The Gin and Tonic Show, irashaimasu. Welcome, everyone. I'm Almighty Atheismo. I'm joined here by Ali, Stopspamming, and Klingschor. Today's topic is cosmology or is it cosmography? Both of those things from the Quran and from the Hadith. How does the Muslim tradition portray the shape, disposition, creation, formation of both our planet and of the cosmos and any other realms that they posit exist? We'll be talking about that. Callers, of course, are free to breach whatever topic they want. If you'd like to call in and join us to talk about the topic of the day or a topic of your choosing, just send a Skype contact request or a private message to the Gin and Tonic Show on Skype. When you come on, please make sure to mute, minimize, or turn off your blog TV so you don't hear an echo. All people who call in are advised that this is being streamed live over blog TV, unlike IR8 debates, right? But it's being streamed live over blog TV and is also being recorded for later upload on YouTube. So, Klingschor, get us started. What does
the universe according to Islam look like?
What does exactly? Yes. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
as you know, there's a spherical Earth, but is actually, miraculously known. There is an expanding universe. The sun is, of course, the center of our galaxy, and the Earth goes around it, and that's all there is to it, really. Did I mention that I've converted to Islam?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well,
stop your time.
I'm
trying
essentially. What can I say? It's
Yeah, he's showing off CPR. Hurry up! Come on.
Yes, I am. All right. So essentially, well, where would you like me to start? I mean, there's a flat Earth. There's 7 Earths. There's 7 hells. 7 heavens. There's the dome of Earth. Let's go start at the beginning. Let's start with the Earth. All right. So essentially, there are numerous passages in the Quran and numerous different kinds of words used to express how the Earth is flat or laid out flat. For example, in Surah 88, verse 20, we are told that the Earth was sutiha, which means to be made flat, to be flattened, to be spread out. In Surah 79, verse 30, the word dah is used, which means to roll out, to spread out, to expand, to widen up. Now, there is a really archaic meaning to daha alternatively, which means to make something to make bountiful, basically. But the overwhelming majority of scholars and exegetes and mufassirun said that it means to make flat, despite what a certain video made by a certain person has said to the contrary. Then there's daha, which is in Surah 91, verse 6, which means to spread out, to stretch out. By the way, I'm getting all of this from Abdul Halim and Badawi's Dictionary of Quranic Usage, which is an academic source. By Muslims, actually. Muslim academics, if such a thing were possible. Then we've got in Surah 51, verse 48, we're told that the world was farasha, which means to spread out, to lay out, to expand something. In Surah 13:3, Surah 15:19, Surah 57, Surah 50, verse 7, we're told that the world was madda, which means to spread out, to add to supply, to replenish, to extend, to elongate, to reach out, to reach up. In Surah 84, verse 3, we're told the world was mudda, which means to spread out, to be stretched out. Now, I'm not sure. I think mudda is the one referring to what will happen to the Earth at the end of time, when basically the Earth is returned to how it was prior. So basically, all the mountains will be removed and it'll be flattened completely again. And then there is in Surah 51, verse 48, Mahdun, which means to pave the way, to spread out, to remove difficulties, to smooth things out. And then in Surah 20, verse 53, we are told that the Earth was Mahd, which means, or Mad, which is a cradle, plain, spread out, habitable, well prepared. So there's a possible meaning there of just being habitable, but another meaning is just to be made out flat. Then in Surah 78, verse 60, we're told that the Earth was widely spread out, widely outstretched as an expanse. Surah 2 verse 22 says that the earth was firash, spread out, expanse. Another alternate meanings for alternate meanings for this is bedding, furnishing, couches. Oh, and we were also told that the earth, this flat earth, was secured with autad, which means pegs or stakes. So essentially, the earth is frequently described as being spread out flat and held down by pegs. Now, some of these spread out flat words can mean bountiful or can mean, or refers to what will happen at the end of time. But most of them don't. Most of them just say that the earth is spread out flat, and the main primary meaning of the word is spread out flat.
So, someone in the chat has said that they don't see the problem and that they love to be spread out and pegged.
Yes, I see your point. However, what
was their username?
It's not important.
What do you think?
I thought it would be the Prophet Muhammad. Anyway, but the point is that when you describe the earth in your holy book by God as being spread out flat and flattened and extended out flat and pegged down, it kind of looks like it's flat and pegged down and not like a sphere. You know, I mean, it basically, my point is, right, and if you're a Muslim listening, you can go, but, you know, it's all a metaphor. Yeah, sure. The thing is, if you look at the text without religious presuppositions, if you remove the presupposition that the text has to be true because it is from God, ergo it has to have a flat earth, ergo it can't have ergo it has to have a round earth, or it can't have a flat earth. If you remove those presuppositions and look at the text as it is, let the text speak for itself, what are we looking at here? The text is describing the earth as being flat and extended pegs.
Kling, one quick question. Is there an ancient Arabic word for sphere or ball?
I'm sure.
I
could look it up.
I assume there is. But that's not the word
there
used.
definitely is.
Yeah.
No, if there is, the question was, if there is such a word, why didn't they use it? Because otherwise somebody could argue, well, they didn't really have a word for a sphere in those days. They weren't so sophisticated.
No, they did. And the reason they didn't use it is, well, they didn't know.
That was my question, whether there is a word in ancient Arabic for sphere.
Actually, let me have a look, because what is in ancient Arabic, it'd be more interesting if
Well, MSA has it, but the question is whether the old dictionaries have it.
Well, I just searched an online Quran for the word sphere, and it said that it didn't occur. But I could search for, I don't know, other terms. I don't recall. I mean, as far as their existing, what?
There is the word.
It's
The
cold
root
water.
is DWR, so dawar or something, which
Dawar.
means circle. Which means circle.
Oh, well.
Or
Sorry,
spin.
it can mean circle. So they could have used, at the very least, they could have said circle.
It also can mean spin, but
Yeah, but it could also mean house.
Wow.
no, that's dog.
Yeah,
which is from that root. They
Are you sure?
What they have is that, well, in the dictionary they have the roots, and then they go the words derived from that root.
Yeah, I gotcha. I thought dar was just the D and then two R's, and that it was just crunched together. But whatever.
Dar al-Islam.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean they do that sometimes. If you have two of the same consonant in a root, they mash it and make it just one. For some of the shorter words, but yeah. Now, what would you say? Their argument is that the language is simply poetic, and that it would be no different from any of us saying that the sun is coming up or the sun is setting, even though we know full well that it's not the sun's motion relative to us that's causing this phenomenon; it's ours. So,
well, the thing is, right, is that in antiquity, there is among Semitic people, there was a worldview which was that the Earth was flat. The Semitic cosmographical, is it cosmography? Yeah, the Semitic cosmographical model, as opposed to the Hellenic one. And the Semitic cosmographical model, as expressed in ancient Babylon, in the ancient Levant, in the Bible, and I would say continued this tradition in the Quran, was of a flat Earth, mountains holding it down, mountains as pegs, with an Earth expanse, a canopy of the heavens, which the sky was the heavens, and then as it progressed, especially in late antique Judaism, there being layers to that heaven. That was
and invisible pillars.
Yes, the pillars are debated, but that's the model, and so basically, it just looks as though the Quran is simply off the cuff, just taking for granted this Semitic cosmographical model to be true. Right? That's just what it looks like if you remove religious presupposition. And even he's referring to it poetically, but he's poetically referring to the wrong model.
Yeah.
Like he could have poetically referred to the sphere of the Earth.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Exactly.
Instead, he poetically referred to the flat Earth with the seven heavens as the sky. Sky and heaven being this. That's the next one. Sky and heaven are the same word. Sama.
Right.
Well, but you know what? I think it's one thing worth mentioning though, is that this is in the Encyclopedia of Islam by Brill, volume 2, page 577. There's an interesting little thing here, which says over half a century of Arab familiarity with. So basically, it's talking about the transition from the Umayyad to the Abbasid dynasty, that era, and they were basically under the Abbasids especially, but beginning in the Umayyad types, the Arab society was, or Arab-dominated society was, inundated with Hellenic and Indian and Persian thought and science, which began to be really properly reutilized during the Abbasids. But keeping that in mind, what it says is, over half a century of Arab familiarity with and study of Indian, Iranian, and Greek geographical science from the time of the Caliph al-Mansur, who was the second Abbasi Caliph, up to the time of al-Mamun, a very famous Abbasi Caliph who built the Bayt al-Hikmah, resulted in completely revolutionizing Arab geographical thought. Such concepts as that the Earth was round and not flat, and that it occupied the center position of the universe, were introduced to them for the first time properly and systematically. Because
go ahead.
Because so what it's saying is that initially the Arabs believed that the Earth was the universe, which is what the biblical model is. The biblical model isn't geocentric per se, because it isn't like the Earth's and the sun's going around it. The Earth is the universe in the geocentric model, capped by heaven at the top and hell at the bottom. That or Sheol or whatever. That is the universe, and that was what the Arabs used to believe. And so the Arab Muslims believed that. The earliest Arab Muslims believed that. And then, when they came into Hellenic science, according to the Encyclopedia of Islam, particularly in the Abbasi era, they changed their view, and it became, the Hellenic model, where the Earth is not the entire universe, but the center of the universe, with the planets going around it, and that it's not flat, it's round. That is what the Hellenic model was, which was introduced to the Arabs. Which means that if the Quran was, spherical Earth with, the sun in the middle, then it's weird that if they already believed in a spherical Earth, as the Quran said, supposedly, according to Muslims today, who try to make it look as though it's round Earth and not flat Earth, then why is it that they had to be introduced to the idea of a spherical Earth from Greek thought? Weird, huh? It almost looks as though the Quran just says that the world was flat, and the Arabs believed the world was flat, and that was it, really. But I've got another one for you, and then I'll let you go on to what you wanted to get onto. I think he died in the 15th century. I think he was born in the 14th century. Have you ever heard of Abdurrahman Asyuti?
Yes.
Yeah, very. Yeah. Oh no, he was born in the 14th. No, he was born in the 15th century and died in the 16th, at the very beginning of the 16th century. So I'm just going to say 15th century because that's what he lived the majority of life. 15th century Muslim polymath, Asyuti. Actually, one of the few Muslim scholars from history that I really respect, actually, or whose works I find really interesting and fascinating and worthwhile reading. Asyuti said concerning Surah, I think it was Surah 79 verse 30, which ironically Zakir Naik now tries to say means egg.
Yeah.
Concerning this word daha, which the overwhelming majority of traditional exegetes took to mean flat and not bountiful. Asyuti says, it's Sutiha. So it's actually Surah 88 verse 20. Never mind.
Mm-hmm.
Concerning Surah 88 verse 20, Asyuti says, as for his words Sutiha, laid out flat, this on a literal reading suggests that the earth is flat, which is the opinion of most of the scholars of the revealed law, and not a sphere as the astronomers al-Hiyah have it. In other words, at the time of Asyuti, in the 15th century, the majority of the ulama, the majority of the clerics, the scholars of the revealed law, believed that the earth was flat.
Well, but okay, now
whilst the astronomers believed it to be a sphere.
So if we were to travel back in time to the 9th century and talk to people from the Mutazilite school, we might actually find religious scholars who were prepared to say that the Earth was round. But then we travel forward in time, and we can find astronomers, scientists who think it is, but not as many. I'm sure that there's always a division of opinion, but it seems like they backslid on this issue.
No, they didn't, because the ulama always believed the Earth was flat.
Well, but isn't there at least one tafsir that says that what modern apologists say that it's a metaphor?
There might be one or two, but the majority of there's always been a very strong tradition in the ulama, at least in the medieval period, of believing the Earth is flat, in opposition to what the scientists and the philosophers believe. And some intelligent ulama did think it was round, but most didn't. And this, hold on, I've got a source for this. Let me just go find it. And this is not well known. Muslims can get away with pretending that this wasn't the case, but it actually was. There's actually an academic paper written on the cosmography of the Quran, and he talks about this. And now I just have to go and find it.
So while you do that, I think you actually mentioned this already, but on the Earth is flat type thing. Surah, I believe it's 31. It's Surah of the Prophets, or Surah Al-Anbiya.
Yeah.
And starting from verse 30. And okay, go ahead. You go then.
No. You finish, then I'll tell you this.
Actually, we have our first guest while you guys are polishing up your research, and Jay is joining us.
I've got it right here.
Okay.
Okay. Well, this isn't really.
I'll let you go. You go.
Okay.
Ali.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So basically, and I read this in Arabic, and I read the tafsirs in Arabic as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts off by saying, "Oh, those infidels, do they not see that the sky?" Again, sky is not very scientifically defined here. Yeah, samawat is actually the word. And the earth were together, and we split them apart, and we made from water everything alive. Do they not believe? Some people say that it's actually the word they were together and we split them apart was actually not what it's supposed to mean, but in fact was meant that they were dry, and the splitting was actually making rain. And so either way, it's bullshit.
I love how that verse begins. Oh, those infidels!
Yeah, of course, it's always those damn infidels. but either way, it's bullshit. I mean, there's no reading that you can make of this that will make it scientifically accurate. And then it says, and we made in the earth mountains so that it doesn't shake with them. And we put in these paths so that they can get from place to place, and so they might come to see some other crap about infidels. And so basically, the way I like to imagine this, and then it goes on to, you know, the sky is like a dome or like a tent cover, and a whole lot of other crap. But the way I like to see this is, because I read Tafsir ibn Kathir on this, and he has some pretty convincing evidence that the way they saw this is like the Earth is kind of like a rug, okay, and this rug is sitting on top of water, and so if there was no mountains holding down the rug, it would move around and shake on top of the water. And so God stuck these mountains down on these rugs so that they would stop shaking, but he was careful to leave paths for people to get from place to place. And so, of course, a cartoonish view of the universe, but I don't know, I just felt like saying that. Go ahead.
By the way, do you know how people know that it's above the water? Because it's obvious. If you drill a hole, you reach water.
Well, actually,
oil.
Ibn Kathir actually uses other Quranic verses to show that the earth is like a rug on top of water. It's hilarious, the view that these people had of the earth at the time. It's obviously nothing like, you know, current science, but
Jay, thank you for joining us. What do you have for us today? Are you with us? I told her before I brought her on, if we have connection troubles, well, she'll have to ask it offline. I'll give her a...
Here, why don't I tell you what I found, and then when I finish, maybe she'll be reconnected properly.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So this is a quote from Damien Janos's Quranic cosmography in its historical perspective, some notes on the formation of a religious worldview, which is from the Religion journal. Okay, so essentially he reveals the following. The Ptolemaic cosmological model was endorsed first and foremost by the learned communities of the Islamic world, such as the philosophers and the astronomers, as well as by some theologians, historians, and littérateurs. In contrast, Muslim traditionalists, so this is most of the ulama, the traditionalists, the religious establishment, rejected this astronomical model, which they regarded as a foreign import that had nothing to do with the core message of Islam. They then developed a traditional cosmology. What am I saying? They then developed in parallel a traditional cosmology based on the 7 earth and 7 heaven model as described in the Quran. To be sure, of 7 earths stacked on top of each other, and then 7 heavens on top of that, like a stack of coins.
Are the 7 hells also... Wait, are the 7 hells directly below?
We'll get into that, because that's what's difficult, because the Quran is incoherent, so it's kind of hard to tell exactly the precise details. To be sure, some attempts to reconcile these two cosmological models were carried out more or less successfully, but it is improbable that such endeavors would have been embraced by traditionalist scholars. So, in other words, the traditionalists rejected the Hellenic imported model and instead stuck to the true model as expressed in the Quran and Semitic tradition, which was flat Earth.
Hi.
Hey Jay, what do you say?
I want to talk about the Mufti, Saudi Mufti. He was the head of the organization, the official organization of Islam in Haram or
Abdulaziz
Haram.
bin Baz.
Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah bin Baz. So he said, I am quoted. I will read it in Arabic now, and after that I will translation.
Okay.
I know this.
القول. Okay.
Go.
Okay. القول بدوران الأرض قول باطل، والاعتقاد بصحته مخرج من الملة، لمنافاته ما ورد في القرآن الكريم من أن الأرض ثابتة وقد ثبتها الله بالجبال أوتادا. قال سبحانه وتعالى: والجبال أوتادا، وقوله جل وعلا: وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت، وهي واضحة المعنى، فالأرض ليست كروية ولا تدور كما بين جل وعلا، وقد يكون دورانها أو تغييرها من غضبه سبحانه في بعض الأحيان، كما قال تعالى: أو أمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور، أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حصابا فستعلمون كيف نذير. والجبال موضوعة في الأرض لترسيها عن الدوران والتحرك. قال تعالى: وألقى في الأرض رواسي أن تميد بكم وأنهارا وسبلا لعلكم تهتدون. So we can see obviously from this, there is no evidence in Quran say that the earth it is go around moon, or the earth is not, it is spherical, or the earth science bring the evidence about the earth. Quran completely say the opposite what the science it's already said by evidence.
So what precisely
so
did he say?
That was the translation. She was just translating what he said. Basically,
No, because okay, well, I recognize like every third word, so that I can tell that was her kind of condensing of it.
This is what he said,
matter.
right? I did not declare that those who what he said was
Short version.
Yeah, well, that's fine too. Yeah. No, I mean, or read it.
He reneged because initially what he said was that basically anyone who believes that the Earth is round is an apostate and should be killed, and that he said the Earth is clearly flat according to the Quran. And then he over time he changed his position, and he eventually withdrew. He withdrew his view when a Saudi prince went into space.
But it doesn't matter.
Proving.
The Quran.
So that's bizarre. It's like, yeah, it's like, did he think that the moon landing and all other space travel was faked by a bunch of unbelievers? But if a true Muslim went there, well, it must have been, well.
But guys, it doesn't matter what he said or what he think or even he changed his mind or not, because he's put the ayah from Quran. That's evidence in Quran. Quran it's completely go to opposite side of the science. Quran say الجبال أوتاتا. Quran say والأرض كيف سطحت. Quran said all that blah blah blah. So it doesn't matter even if that guy he already died. Even if that guy he changed his mind or not, it doesn't matter. The Quran there, the Quran said it's opposite of science.
You know,
What
out
do
of
you need more than
curiosity,
that?
Ali and Jay, from your experience, what is the rate of moon landing denial amongst Muslims that you've known? Whether it be for the reasons like this mufti that they think, okay, well, it contradicts the cosmological model, or whether they're more like the tinfoil hat type conspiracy theorists. How because on the English speaking internet, it's about 90% of the people who deny that the moon landings took place. So I'd like to know if I'd like to know.
I think that the moon denial
Not
landing
very high,
numbers
from
are
my
just-
opinion.
Really?
are just more
Yeah.
vocal.
Do you think it's actually?
I don't think it's not very high.
There's
it's
more
actually lower?
9/11 people than moon.
I think that well, from my experience, I've not met one person who doesn't think that it happened.
Oh,
Of
okay.
the-
So do you think
of
that
the-
that subculture just doesn't exist?
Of the exploding plethora of rabid conspiracy theories that I always see amongst Muslims, ranging from the Freemasons to evil Shiites to Zionists to Crusaders to
To
just
jinn,
about anything.
devils,
Yeah,
and not.
and it's actually surprising how often I see like the New World Order conspiracies among Muslims all the time. I've never actually
Yeah,
come across moon landing denial.
In my opinion, most of them they didn't care. They just read the Quran without understand, without asking, without put any question on, and just say it. And if you tell them, they will be against you if you tell them that your Quran it is not accurate and your Quran is not follow the science. In that minute, they will be against you and fighting you, and maybe kill you. But in the daily life or general life, they are not care that much.
Yeah.
Has anyone seen that Onion News sketch between the 9/11 conspiracy theorist and the terrorist spokesman? And has anyone seen that? First of all, the guy is like, oh well, Bush and Bin Laden hang out, and it really wasn't Al Qaeda. And the spokesman for Al Qaeda is just frustrated. He's like, this guy's an idiot. I can't talk sense to this person. If you should look it up. It's pretty funny. But I just imagining listening like to some like a Western conspiracy nut who denies the moon landings, talking to a mufti who does accept the moon landings but thinks that the Earth is flat. You could put that on pay-per-view, and I can just imagine the mufti saying, the Quran says that the Earth is flat, the Hadith clearly describe flat Earth, but you're insane for thinking that they didn't land on the moon. What is wrong? That would be hilarious.
Can we talk about 41?
Oh,
Nine.
let's Jay, thank you for your input. Thank you for the Arabic reading in particular. Take care. Salam.
Okay, bye.
Oh, bye. No, didn't mean to be so abrupt about that.
Drop the hammer.
She always comes back. I don't know.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, can we talk about Surah 41 from 9 to 12?
Go for it.
Okay. All right. So it starts off by saying, do you apostatize the one, or do not believe in the one who made the earth in 2 days, and made with him, partners, made mountains above it, and blah, 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 blah. He did all that other stuff in 4 days, mountains and some other stuff. And then he turned to the sky while it was smoke, and he said to it and the earth, will you come willingly or not willingly? And they both say that we will come willingly.
Yeah, they were talkative in those days.
I just think that whoever makes the argument that this book has anything to do with science has got to read this and explain how this makes sense in any way other than childish cartoons. And then, and so he made the 7 skies in 2 days, and he told to every sky its thing. And then he made the skies pretty, but with lights. And he's the great blah, blah, blah.
But you know
So
what they
let's just
say.
recap what he said here. Let's just recap, okay? Made the earth in 2 days, and then he did the mountains and stuff in 4 days, and then he finished the sky in 2 more days after the other days that he spent on the sky. And this is all supposed to be 6 days. So I'm assuming that he made the Earth with the mountains and all that stuff in 4 days, and then he did the whole sky in 2 days. And so, just think about what's being said here. Okay, first, the Earth is made and everything else in it is made. And then he turns to the sky, okay, and makes it pretty with stars in the last 2 days.
From out of smoke.
From out of smoke, of course, yeah. And so, obviously, this is a mirror image of modern cosmology, right? Because that's exactly what we know to be true. The Earth first, 2/3 of the time, and then the stars come to being within the last third of time, just assuming that day doesn't actually mean real day, and we're just going to say that these are time periods, okay? Because that's usually what they'll say. And so, I mean, how can you argue with this being an accurate scientific account of what we currently know to be true about cosmology?
Because you're a hater.
It's an airtight case. No, I'm saying this is an airtight case for modern day cosmology. Earth first, in 2/3 of the time, and then the stars come in the last third of a period, relative to the time that it took to make the Earth. And so, of course, this is,
Case
when
closed.
Muslims,
Miracle.
yeah, when Muslims say that the Quran foretold all these things 1,400 years ago, and how could they have possibly known? They have a point. I mean, who can argue with this kind of genius? 1,400 years ago, the Earth was built in 2/3 of the time that it took and I'm sorry, in double the time that it took for the stars to be made. And so, obviously, case closed. I'm not sure why you guys haven't converted to Islam yet. I mean, it's open and shut case right there.
Well, because this is the only planet that took life, so he had to take his time on this one, and the rest is just shiny.
That's right. Yeah, and he made life, he made all this stuff, and then he turned around and made stars, because of course you don't need stars to make, heavier elements, right?
Yeah.
That was discounted a long time ago. I mean, we all know that.
The point is, the Quran is absolutely, totally accurate, except when it is meant to be a sign. And if it is not a sign, then you have to accept it's a miracle. So it's very easy.
Well, the poetic value is really what it's about here, okay? Because these verses are so poetic, you couldn't have possibly made sense in any other way and still kept the poetic miracle of the Quran. I mean, you couldn't have possibly, switched the order around or whatever just to make it a little bit more believable. And you would have lost the poetry. And so, you have to keep that in mind too.
Nightfork, welcome to the show. What's up today?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to say, thank you guys for having this show. It's an awesome show, and I know Klingschor and Stop Us on Facebook. But anyways, hi to Ali and Atheismo, you too.
Thank you.
One question that I have, and before starting this debate, I'd want to know what all these words mean, because Quran has a very, very limited vocabulary. It's about like 2,000 words, root words probably, and derivatives. I don't know exactly. You guys know better than I do. So when do you say who's right? What the meaning should be taken into account? Which one is the right meaning? Because other than that, you're pretty much interpreting on your own. One thing is to go back into, earliest history of Islam, go back to Tabari or Bagavi or Tafsir al-Jalalain or Ibn Kathir. And then you can say, oh, okay, this is what they meant. Probably they were right. But if you read those things, even those tafsirs are not really, they're confused pretty much. So how do you take which words mean what really? So flat earth,
you can't realistically. The point, I mean, something that I learned in South Africa in the old days, if somebody asks you who is right, you just say the one with the AK-47.
I agree. I agree to that point totally.
I would offer a slightly more nuanced response in that there are two kinds of ways of interpreting the Quran. I think there's the linguistic meaning of the Quran, and then there's the contextual meaning of the Quran. So the contextual is basically using hadiths to understand the context of why a verse was revealed, because a verse can say something that means something else. So, for example, I don't know, وَإِزْرِبُهُنَّ, and beat your wives. But if we use hadiths, it's beat your wives, but not too hard.
Yeah.
Right. So it still allows you to beat your wives, but just like don't kill them, don't thrash them. Just basically beat them as you'd beat a child. Is essentially the what you derive from that, because wives are basically compared to children, as they are in the Quran, by the way, Surah 3 verse 14. But whatever. That one way of looking at the Quran is to look at hadiths, but I happen to think most hadiths are fake, so hard to get the true meaning. The other way is to look at the Quran linguistically and to look and see what the language says. And for that, basically, the best we've got, and what I do, is I look at the classical Arabic definitions of the terms and words employed in the Quran.
May I interject for a moment? Sorry. So
Sure.
those meanings, most of the times you look at Al-Qamus or Lane's Lexicon or whatever.
Right.
But those were compiled much later. They were compiled in the 15th century and all those. You can't derive a meaning that was meant to be in 6th century and
that is
have a meaning derived
correct.
from a 15th century dictionary. That is not right.
We are entirely limited to
and
the Abbasi.
hadiths, as far as hadiths are concerned, they were compiled like almost about 250 to 300 years later.
And the earliest ones were 100 years later. Written hadith collections.
But most of the Sahih hadiths, you can say. Some were compiled, but most of those are still discarded pretty much, So that's the question. How do you know which ones are the right? Because if you go to someone and say, a Muslim guy, and say, oh, okay, I'm gonna read to you Ibn Ishaq, or I'm gonna read to you Al-Tabari, they're gonna straight away reject you and say, oh, are you guys fooling us? So this is not the case. You can't go back to those things and say, hey, this has to be most authentic because this dates back to the time when the events were happening or were like not happening, but this is like the closest to the events that you can get.
But
so
this is the reason why you need so many scholars.
So basically, we can understand the Quran as the Abbasids understood it. That's it. That is as far back as we can go.
Okay.
Because all the hadiths come from the Abbasi era, and all the Fusha Arabic and the establishment of the definitions and stuff is also mainly from the Abbasi era, and so that is as far back as we can go.
Let Ali come in.
I mean, first things first, you've got to kind of pick your battles, because some people are just not really interested in having the conversation. All they're really interested in is just, throwing the ball in your court and saying, ha ha ha, you can't get me. And so in some cases, nothing you say will make any difference. Now, for the person that you're having a conversation with who is actually willing to listen, you can kind of lay out the options, right? You only have so many options when you're trying to read the Quran and understand it. Number one is you just read the Quran and you try to understand it on its own terms without anybody else's input. In my opinion, if there was a God and he really wanted to communicate, that's really what you should be able to do. You should be able to go and pick up the text that he supposedly sent down and figure out what he was trying to say. I mean, he shouldn't have the communication problems that we have, okay? And so, you tried that and you can't understand anything, right? Because if you try to read the Quran and you don't use any tafsirs or any hadiths or anything, you're not going to get very far. You're not really going to understand much. And so then you have some more options. Option one is you try to understand it as the people around at the time understood it. Or you take the position that the further removed you are from the people who actually were around at the time, the more you understand what was meant by it. Now, you're free to take that position, right? That, hey, look, if you have interpreted the Quran 1400 years after it was written, you have a better understanding of what was meant by it than somebody who was there at the time. You can take that. Now, I personally can't take that. I can't believe that because, well, I mean, we know how these things work. The further removed you are from anything, the less you understand it. The less you understand the culture, the less you understand the phrases that were being used. It just becomes really difficult to make hay out of anything. And so, really, the only option you have is to read the Quran, try to understand as much of it on its own terms as you can, and then for the parts that you really just can't make sense out of, you have to go back and try to see, in context of the time, what was meant by these phrases and by these things that were said. Any reasonable person, really interested in having a serious conversation, should take this to be a pretty reasonable position. Now, any person who does not take that, I think you're wasting your time talking to them in the first place.
I agree. Sorry, I agree, and I take this point. And so, is this a battle we are fighting in vain, in a sense? Because no matter how you tell them this, you can interpret in this way, or this is how it was interpreted, and they're just going to use the secular logic that, oh, since it is from Allah, and so it has to be meant this way and not this way. You're interpreting it wrong. You're wrong. Allah meant it to be this way, and this is right. And this is. And if you go back at that time, you don't have pretty much, you don't have much account of what was happening around Arabia. It was pretty much like in a society. It was landlocked, if you will. It was a landlocked place where nothing much was happening. The only thing that happened was Quran and Islam, in a sense, pretty much.
No,
so
there was a lot of stuff going on in Yemen. But
Yeah,
I'll get what you mean.
I mean, your point is well taken. Here's the thing, right? Is you've got to just, I mean, honestly, and this may seem a little pessimistic in a way, but at some point you've got to just realize that the person you're talking to isn't interested in having a serious conversation about the thing. Okay? If people are really serious about having conversations, then you will start to see them open up to some of your arguments, because I mean, it's difficult to see how you can have a serious conversation with somebody who expects you to take their word 1400 years removed from this stuff to be the actual accurate way to interpret these things, when for 1400 years the closer you get to the revelations, the less people understood what they meant. Now, I mean, why even at some point you've got to just say, well, I'm not interested in having this conversation anymore. And for a lot of the times, that's what you're going to end up doing. Is all you can do is lay out your arguments and hope that some reasonable person will listen to them. A lot of the times, it may not happen right away, but these things do make an impact. So. But you really have to just kind of back away at some point, because there's really no use in talking to somebody who, no matter what you tell them, they just keep throwing the ball in your court, and they're just, oh, you have to see it the way that I'm telling you that it means, even though you've got all the evidence, you've got all the tafsirs, you've got all these things, and they are just saying whatever they like and making the Quran fit with their own personal view. So, a lot of these conversations are going to be useless. And it's a little pessimistic, but it's true. Right.
Look, the thing is that my response to what you said, Nightfork, would be that you're entertaining their presuppositions if you allow them to say, but God meant it this way. So, I don't believe in God, and I don't accept the use of God in an argument to prove something about the Quran. Right, because Muslims always try to do that. Oh, well, the reason why it's full of plagiarism and stories that look like they were just taken straight out of previous Islamic traditions, like it's just a synthesis of prior works and not the original word of God, is because God specially designed it to make it look that way. Well, no. I don't accept the presupposition of God, ergo, what does the text seem to indicate? It's just on face value by itself.
Yeah, I agree. That's circular logic.
Now, when it comes to understanding it, you're right. We can only understand the Quran by looking at the Arabic terms, which were defined by Abbasi era Arabic linguists and lexicographers, such as Sibue, who was born after the Abbasid revolution. Like it's a long time after Muhammad, 200 years. Around 150 to 200 years is when the Arabic language was properly defined and structured and all the grammar set. And so it's these linguists and lexicographers who we have to rely upon to understand the Arabic of the Quran. Arabic that was defined, the meanings of which were defined 100 to 200 years after the Quran was actually made. So, but that's as early as we can go. But it's better than nothing, because what's the alternative? Well, either we can look at what the earliest possible meanings were given to it, which is Abbasid era, or we can throw it completely out the window. What's the alternative for a Muslim? Saying we can't know anything? Great. Well, then it's a meaningless book. Throw it out. Like, or we can try and understand the Arabic. Oh, great. Well, then we go back to what the earliest possible Abbasi scholars had to say about the meanings of Arabic terms and words. That's what I would say.
I agree.
Plus, here's another argument that I think, if somebody's serious about it, will help you in that regard. Does this God that they believe in actually really want people to follow this religion and all these things? Then there's that God can only reasonably expect you to read the Quran and have it be understood easily, because any average person is not going to be able to go in and dig around and find all the meanings and look for all the tafsirs and all these other things. And especially if they come up with this Arabic argument too. I mean, if this God really wants you to follow all these things, then it should be easily understood for any layperson in any language quite easily. Otherwise, it's madness to expect people to do all this research to figure out, what was meant by one word from 1,300 different sources every time you want to read something.
Yeah.
Totally agree. It's supposed to be mubin, but it's not. In fact, it's not.
Exactly.
It's 20%. It's totally vague. More than probably 20%.
Well, you see, the thing is, a lot of apologists or members of different sects that are competing with other sects, and there's a tug of war over the meaning of the word. A lot of the time, that's just purely in the imagination of the people fighting it. It's really because the thing is, Arabic is much more precise a language than it gets credit for. People have this prejudice about ancient languages that they think, they must be vague and mysterious and nebulous. But as you say, the total number of different roots, the total number of words is actually quite low, much lower than you would get in the newspaper of the average newspaper of just about any publication you could read today in any language. The vocabulary used is quite small. The number of roots is relatively few, and the number of forms, the different verbal forms, are usually very precise and give an exact. And then, of course, they tack on pronouns at the end, so you know if it has a direct object or an indirect object, you know exactly who it's aimed at. And there's really, when you look at the word in the original Arabic, even after you've studied it a short time, like I have, it's completely obvious what it means, who it's talking about, and only some places where they use kind of bizarre idiomatic expressions is there actually a gray area, like what is he talking about? Like, for example, there's a verse that says, cut off not the ears of your livestock, will you change that which God has made? Now, there's no question that it says talking about that the words involved are cut off the ears of livestock, but there are some scholars who have interpreted this to mean that it's really a metaphor for personal grooming. So you know what I mean, you can't stop people from doing that kind of thing and just pretending that this is really a slangy idiomatic expression. But as far as the core meanings of the words, Arabic is a very precise language in that regard. So a lot of the time, I would say 9 times out of 10 where they say, oh, well, the meaning of this word is vague, they either don't know or they're just...
So you're talking about classical Arabic or the contemporary Arabic?
Well, both. Both.
Okay.
I mean, idioms have changed, but a lot of the core vocabulary is intact, and the grammatical model is virtually unchanged. There are archaic verb forms. There's about 10 forms that survive from the time of Quranic Arabic to today. And then there are these 5 archaic forms that are somewhat rare. But I've never I had a copy of the Quran that had the verbal forms. I've never encountered the archaic forms. The Quran uses fewer verbal forms again than most modern Arabic texts you'll use that use a smattering of the 10 surviving ones. In the Quran, it was mostly 1 1 1 1 3 4 4 1 1 1. They don't use a wide variety of different forms there. So it's actually simpler. It's different. And there's no since it's essentially a dead language. It's not like you can. It's not like if you're learning Chinese, you can just watch Chinese television, watch watch cartoons in Chinese and get better. Since it's a dead language, there isn't a lot of media, so that's a barrier to learning it. But overall, the Quran doesn't cover as much ground, and like I said, other than the lack of frame of reference for some issues, it should be easier to learn than modern Arabic for someone coming from outside. But I mean, Arabic's a really interesting language. I've been studying other languages recently, mostly focusing on East Asian languages. But it's always fun to see how they'll take the same root and get meanings out of the same root by playing with it like an accordion. You know what I mean? You lengthen the vowel at the end, it means something else. You drop the vowel at the beginning and add a glottal stop. You double the consonant in the middle, and they all have different usages, but they all come back to the same core idea. So it's one of the more interesting languages that I've studied. But it's the exact opposite of vague. It's highly agglutinative, very precise.
Okay, I disagree. I find it incredibly vague. And what colleagues have told me is that the Arabic used in the Quran is of no value of them at all. So if you read sentences like, what was it, Jesus, like Adam, was made from dust, everybody knows it's supposed to be Adam, but if you read it, it actually refers to Jesus. So there's a lot of possibilities of interpretation, which is why you need all the scholars, and you have all the scholars, and that's why you have all the different let's say, interpretations and all the different groups who adhere to a specific interpretation.
Well, what was the actual verse? What do you remember? Do you have the surah and verse the verse you were just talking about? Because what happens a lot in the Quran is the Quran uses pronouns and doesn't tell you who the pronoun is linked to. It does that constantly. He did this. They did that. They did that. You did that. They did that. He did that. And then it doesn't tell you who the hell they're talking about, and that is admittedly a very frustration. But that's not that the language is imprecise. It's that the way it's written. The author of those passages takes for granted that. I mean, it's almost like coming in on the middle of a phone conversation. You know what I mean? Like walking into a room and someone's on the phone and they're saying, "Yeah, and he just wouldn't shut up, and he just wouldn't this and this and this." It's not that you don't understand what they're saying; it's that you lack critical information. And like I said, you'll have many believers who will assert the perfection of the text, but let's face it, that is undeniably a very serious flaw. So you have instances like the one you talked about where it'll say, "And then he." And it's not clear who he is, so they have
359.
Surah 3, verse 59.
Yep.
Okay, I'll look it up right now. Nightfork, did you have any more before we let you go?
I have one more question, but I'm going to digress. So, shall I ask right now? Or?
Yes, please.
So the other question, I'm going to digress from the topic right now, and the question was, what is the composition timeline for Quran? I mean, if you ask a Muslim, he's going to say, "Oh, okay, it's about 23 years." Now, if you are a skeptic, you are gonna pretty much guess, right? What's the timeline? What is the best evidence we have, and where does it fall? Is it Abdul Malik? It's Hajjaz, or who did Marwan, or Abbasids, Umayyads? Who did that?
Can I lift up the question mark and say nobody knows? Do I get bonus points for that?
But nobody knows. But I can offer some opinions.
QI reference there. I think that probably went over half the audience.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. You don't watch QI. You shouldn't be in our audience. Yeah,
Oh,
so
Love it.
I'm saying it as it is. Okay, so jokery aside, history of the Quran. Yeah,
No,
so
this is serious. Nobody knows.
I agree. That's probably
Thanks.
the finest answer.
Okay, so whilst nobody knows, there are some indications, you could say. So essentially, okay. So there's some things worth keeping in mind. Okay, for example, Robert Hoyland notes that there's almost no reference to the Quran, particularly as there's no reference to the Quran as a source of law until the 8th century. Additionally, in the early 8th century, a Christian polemicist says to a Muslim that not all of your laws and commandments are in the Quran, which Muhammad taught you. Rather, some of them come from Surat al-Baqarah. So indicating that possibly that Surat al-Baqarah was not part of the Quran in the early Umayyad era.
How weird. I mean, it's
The Fiqh Akbar, which is a document dated from the middle of the 8th century, is basically an expression of the Muslim creed. So if the Fiqh Akbar 1 represents the views of Sunni orthodoxy at the time on then prominent issues, and the Quran is not mentioned at all. So it's kind of weird, it seems, but at the same time, I think the earliest datable Quranic references appear on the Dome of the Rock that Abdul Malik built in Jerusalem.
okay. Can I come back to what Stop was saying? Stop was brought up a verse. Now, I apologize. My Arabic pronunciation is awful, so brace yourself. The verse says,
It is really awful.
It is. In the Mathala Isa, in the Ilahi Kamathali Adama. Okay, what that says is inna, indeed, Mathala, the likeness, Isa, Jesus.
359.
Inda is close to or similar to Ilahi, Allah, and then Kamathali, Ka is a prefix that is like emphasis, and then Mathali is actually derivative of the same word earlier. So it again means likeness, and then it says Adama. So you said that there are scholars that disagreed about whether it was talking about Jesus or Adam. Well, clearly in the Arabic, the name of Jesus occurs, the name of Adam occurs, but because of the way it's phrased, it's hard to tell what it means. You understand? But
That's
there's
my
no
point.
question
Exactly.
about who it's talking about. It is talking about both of those figures. It's just that the
Exactly.
way it's phrased is borderline nonsensical.
And this is what I was trying to explain to Nightfork,
Yeah.
that there are instances where it is absolutely unclear. And this is why there are interpretations, and this is why you have scholars. Here, of course, everybody is going to tell you it's talking about Adam. But there are other instances where it says they are definitely not saying this and this, but they're saying this and this. And this is why you have all the different groups. This is where the different madhabs and so on, they differentiate themselves from each other.
All right.
Nightfall. When you say the
One last
Quran,
question.
yeah,
Sorry.
when you're asking about when was the Quran put together, are you asking when the consonantal text was put together, or when is that it? Is it just when the consonantal
No, the consonantal
chain?
text was put by Abdul Malik. I think Hajjaz put those things,
No,
right?
oh, no. Islamic tradition attributes the reign of Abdul Malik and Al-Hajjaj and the dudes he employed with
Hajjaj Ibn Yusuf, right?
establishing the diacritical marks of the Quran.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Which basically would have defined really the meaning of the Quran, because without the diacritical marks you could take so many different meanings and so many different it was just basically Abdul Malik defined what the Quran meant in realistic terms. You could say, oral tradition preserved what it meant, but also had different oral traditions as to what the words meant.
Okay. Can I butt in again with just finishing up, and then I'll drop. But anyway, again with the verse that Stop brought up, the Pickthall translation has, "Lo, the likeness of Jesus with the law is as the likeness of Adam. He created him from dust, and then he said unto him, Be, and he is." So what it seems to be saying is that it's referencing that Jesus, like Adam, wasn't born of parents. He was created, from raw materials, so to speak. So I don't consider that to be after reading the whole thing, in the context. I don't consider it that vague. So I mean, who is it that's fighting over that?
Me.
Oh, okay. All right. Can we? Can we get back to cosmology, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. But let me just clarify this, right? Concerning who actually codified it, right? So the time frame we're looking at. Islamic tradition variously attributes the codification of the Quran. So the codification of the consonantal content of the Quran is attributed variously to Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman. Al-Bukhari tried to unify all three in a single narrative. Basically, Abu Bakr collects the Quran on the advice of Umar, and Uthman validates it by destroying rival editions.
But these are
initially
the
there were
traditions.
three different narratives. Pardon?
These are believed by the traditions. We don't have any proof of those things, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is what is written in the hadith, and that's about it. And we don't have any. I mean, all we know for sure is Quran was changed by Abdul Malik in the sense of adding diacritical marks and all those things. He put the symbols of Islam.
Yes,
he put both the symbols. So Abdul Malik was one of the biggest figures in that sense. But before that, it's pretty much a hazy
unknown
screen, pretty much.
That's right. Also, another notable thing is what Christians believed, and like Al-Kindi confirmed that Uthman made the canonical thing, but Al-Kindi lived in the Abbasi era. Earlier sources, so an earlier 9th century Christian source, which is recording an early 8th century letter between the Christian emperor Leo III and the Muslim Umayyad emperor Umar II, Umar bin Abdulaziz, I think. This letter says that the Quran was composed by Umar, Ali, and Salman al-Farisi. That's what some Christian accounts say. What's more fascinating is what modern Islamologists have said. John Burton argued that Muhammad himself established the Quran in written form. Paul Casanova and Alphonse Mingana said that it was El-Hajjaj who brought together the consonant, not just the diacritical marks, but the consonantal content of the Quran.
Really?
John Wansbrough said that it was Abbasi scholars in Mesopotamia who actually brought together the Quran, the consonantal content of the Quran.
I didn't realize El-Hajjaj was into that kind. I mean, how much weight does that theory? Because I remember he had a notorious reputation for being the heavy-handed governor. I didn't realize he was into that sort of sphere of scholars.
Abdul Malik and El-Hajjaj were really, I think.
So Abdul Malik appointed Al-Hajjaj to do the consonantal and not the consonantal, but the diacritical markings on the Quran. That's what my understanding is, but I could be wrong here.
Yeah. Well, you learn something every day. But I mean, if El-Hajjaj had any kind of liberty with filling in blanks, so to speak, or making choices, I don't know. He was a pretty violent man, and there's a lot of violent passages. So there's a suspicious cloud over that situation for me. But who knows? It could be nothing. You know what I mean? I don't want to engage in a wild conjecture.
Well, please, why not?
I'm sorry, but like I said, he was notorious. He was notorious for how brutal he was and how heavy-handed. And to think that this guy sort of he I mean it's like finding out that a holy book was edited by Vlad Tepes or something like that. He's like, sure, when I'm not sticking a bunch of people's head on spikes, I'll get around to editing your holy book. Yeah, it's a bit odd. Okay, so thank you for your contribution, Night Fork.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, now really quick, David from. He wants to come in. I'll bring in. So I forgot whether he wanted me to ask his question or what.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm fine. I want to ask you.
Welcome to the program. What do you have for us today?
Thank you. I got a question about Surah Ad-Dariyat, or however you pronounce it, Surah 51, and verse 47, which is like the common verse for Muslims to say that the Quran says that there is indeed an expanding universe.
Yeah.
And I
go ahead. Go ahead.
And I think that pretty much all the translations that I read indicate that indeed it is so, because like in the let's take Pitchfall, for example, it says we have built the heaven with might, and we it is who make the vast extent thereof. And I think, like, why would you say make if it indicates that it has just happened? If you say make, it means that it is ongoing, I think, to my English knowledge.
Well, what was the verse in Surah, please?
51 and 47.
Okay, well, I'd like to jump on this because this is something that comes up quite frequently. It's just plain wrong. The people who made this up, if their Arabic was good, they have no excuse. Now, whenever you come across someone with a bad argument like this, don't pounce on someone too hard, because a lot of people just don't know. But whoever came up with this originally is just a filthy liar. There's absolutely nothing about that word that indicates progression or continued action. Nothing.
Okay. I have something to add when you're done.
No,
so
okay, go ahead. But then I have a really long, boring explanation for why exactly it's bullshit. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, I usually take my cues from the people who first took a crack at, and the people who are most accepted as being, people who knew what they were talking about. So I'm looking at that verse in Ibn Kathir, and he says, for his explanation for the first part of that verse is, in the sky we built it, and he says, which means, or i.e., we made it like a roof without any columns. And he explains, inna wa inna lamusi'un, and he says that this means that he made the sky and he made it big. Do you see what I'm saying? This is a guy who is, considered to be, this is who most Muslims go to when they want to understand something, him and Al-Tabari and all, and that's what they say. So I don't really care what a translation in some website says. I'm really not that interested. I'm interested in people who have looked at it, the people who have been trusted all these years for explaining to people what it means. And he says that it made the sky and made it big, like a roof, like a big roof. He make the sky like a big roof. That says nothing about Big Bang or inflation or anything or any of that.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but judging from the translation. But if I read Tafsir al-Jalalain, for example, he says that, and the heaven we built it with might, and indeed we are powerful.
Yeah.
And,
well, the thing is,
it means that he's strong and so on.
Yeah, the word lemusiyun, it means we are the expanders. It's like in Spanish, you have a lot of you can take almost any word and add "or" to it, and it becomes like an occupation or an identity. Matar is to kill, matador is the killer, and the guy who kills the bull. So that's all that word. The word is just it is a noun derived from the participle of a verb. which in its default case indicates the past in their language, just like in ours. For example, a past participle in English would be made, sensed, said, thought, flavored. So when you say that something is lemon flavored, you're not necessarily emphasizing that, okay, it was lemon flavored at one point and it isn't necessarily anymore. You know what I mean? It's just the participle is used to describe its state, but there's nothing explicitly about tense. But if you really want to read into it, you have to you can't avoid the fact that it's based off the past participle. But the verbs, the actual conjugated verbs earlier in the sentence, are clearly in the completed perfective tense, because so when he says, we constructed it, that's in the perfect. It's the same as if we said not just I did something, but I have done something. It's perfective. It's done. It's finished. So the people who say that word means we're continuing to expand it, it's a complete and utter fabrication. That doesn't mean that the individual person who says it to you is lying. It's just that they're kind of disseminating bad information.
And this is why people hate English majors, by the way. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I just think that pretty much all the translations that you read indicates that it is an ongoing process.
Yeah,
they've been. Okay, here's what you should do. Okay, is find an English translation that has not been done within the last 50 years.
Yes.
Yeah, but for example.
No. Just let me finish my sentence. Let me finish what I was going to say. Okay. There's probably plenty of them, and then you can probably find a tafsir that was translated into English prior to 50, 60 years ago. Before the Big Bang was an actual theory. Okay. And then read those tafsirs, and I guarantee you that you're not going to find that's
Which
what
verse was it?
5147.
5147.
Okay, because
all the translations that you're reading online have probably all been done within the last 10, 20 years, and that doesn't really tell you anything. That just tells you that they've looked at the scientific theories and they've made their translations fit.
Yeah.
Sorry, I dropped you up. Sorry,
can I
which
quickly?
verse
Quickly. Here's a total of 6 different translations, just sort of randomly selected. Okay. Sahih International has, "And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed we are," and it has in parentheses, "its expander." Muhsin Khan says, "With power we did construct the heaven. Verily we are able to extend the vastness of space thereof." There it's saying, okay, that verb, that sort of occupational noun, it's saying we are able to do it, and it's using it like it's a modal. In Pickthall we have built the heaven with might, and we it is who make the vast extent thereof. Yusuf Ali has, "With power and skill we did construct the firmament, for it is we who create the vastness of space." And Shakir has, "And the heaven we raised it high with power, and most surely we are the makers of things ample." Dr. Ghali says, "And the heaven is also a sign. We have built it with our hands, i.e. capability, and surely we are indeed extending it wide." So of those, only one had a continuing, Ali hit the nail on the head. Only the most modern of those 7 that I selected had extending. Only the most modern. So this is really something that's come up recently, and you see all the others. It says we're the guy who did it. That's what all the other translations, and those translations are really more with what the actual grammatical breakdown of that word says, because there's nothing about that word, nothing at all that deals with tense. It's just like if I say, this vase took a long time for me to build, I am a potter. You understand? The statement "I am a potter" has no impact on the issue of time on the work of that vase. But I've already said in a previous sentence that the vase has been done. It is completed. So what you need to look at is the actual verb in the first clause of this verse, where it says "we constructed," because it's in a perfective tense. So
devil's advocate.
Yes, go ahead.
What I hear a lot is that people say it is only now that we are even able to understand its intended meaning because we know this. The people in the past were not able to understand it properly, and only now we understand it. And that's
I
why
think
it's
people
more
in the
correct
past
now.
would have been perfectly fine understanding that the sky is still expanding. Okay,
Yeah.
you could have made that point, and they would have been perfectly fine. They couldn't really tell. Okay, and they would have just had to believe it if that were the case.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
I'm
absolute
speaking
that's
to an
bullshit.
empty chair.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm speaking to an empty chair. The chair is speaking. He's
No,
invisible.
I mean,
He's gone.
no, that's a silver bullet right there. Because let's face it, you had a group of early believers who, if the prophet said it, they believed it was true. He could have just messed with them, and they likely would have believed. I mean, the things that he
You're
told
making
them,
it out to be like this concept that was so foreign they couldn't understand things being made bigger.
Yeah.
Of course they could have understood if he said the sky was being made bigger today. I mean, it's
I've got
absolutely
another
absurd to make that
translation.
point.
Of the universe. They did not understand the concept of the universe. They had a constant, perfectly fit firmament. And the
Okay,
firmament
but they
could
had
not
dogmas.
be bigger.
Okay, so they had dogmas about shooting stars being shooting jinns. They'd never seen jinns. They'd never seen
Correct.
shooting stars up close,
Yep.
and they understood that perfectly fine, and they took it as dogma. There is no reason why they couldn't have done the same exact thing about all the other bullshit that they believed, but just to make it so that the universe was expanding or the sky was expanding.
yeah. I mean, if
It's an
we,
absurd argument.
Yeah,
I have another
Can
translation.
I
to
say
recommend.
something?
okay, let David's the guest. Let him come in.
The reason why I thought that all these translations indicated an ongoing process is because, well, I guess it's because English is my second language. I'm from Sweden, but because when Yusuf Ali says, "For it is we who create the vastness of space," but you already explained. But I thought that it would rather say, "For it is we who created the vastness of space," and not who create. Because that was the reason why I got a little bit confused. And by the way, I don't believe in any of the claims about miracles. Like I think that the Quran clearly
You don't need to
indicates that.
qualify your statement that way because
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter whether or not you believe what
Yeah.
you're espousing.
Yeah,
I mean, the point is valid either way, and we have to answer it. And so there's really we understand what you're trying to say. We understand that you're saying that you're not coming from that perspective, but you don't even have to do that because either way, whether you believe it or not, the answer is going to be the same.
Yeah, and just don't want you to look at me like some Muslim who trying
No.
to
No.
to do dawah or
Not at all.
whatever. you know.
No.
Not at all.
No, I mean, someone has to argue for the other side, but it's
Well,
like
I've got a translation to recommend. I've been reading Abd Halim's translation, and Abd Halim translates this verse as, "We built the heavens with our power and made them vast." And then he says, "And we spread out the earth, how we smoothed it out." So I think this is a pretty good translation.
Seems so.
well, okay,
Abd Halim.
you're Swedish. I don't know a lot of Swedish, but how's your German?
No, I can only say like where I come from and
Oh,
how old
okay.
I am.
Well, I mean, but they probably have related words. Like in German, an asphalteur is a person who lays asphalt. They have Arbeiter, a worker. You know what I mean? So that's
very
the kind
similar to Swedish.
right. Exactly. A lot of those words are probably similar. So Becker is baker and so forth. So you have that. That's the kind of category that that word in the Quran is. It describes almost an occupation or something that person is. This is the person who does this, or it's actually in a first person plural. So it says we are the bakers. You know what I mean? It's the verb earlier on where it says we constructed that actually gives a hint as the tense. And you don't have to worry. We're not gonna accuse you of anything here. I mean, we have
Nobody's accusing you of being a Muslim troll.
Yeah, thank you. But also, I always wondered, why does it say that we have built heaven? Is that the angels of Allah, or?
well, it's an imperial we. It's actually common in a lot of ancient cultures for an emperor or someone of a very high rank to refer to themselves in the first person plural.
Oh.
So that's actually pretty normal. I don't think I don't think there's this. I can't think of a place where he refers to himself in the first person singular, but I think there are.
Yeah.
I can't remember off
There's
the
a
top of my
switch.
head though.
There's a switch a couple of times, which makes very awkward reading because he goes from us to I and from we to me.
Right. So actually, that's the issue. Is he's not always very consistent. But like
Surat al-Anbiya, very prominent example of it in there.
oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, that's why he refers to himself as we. I think the Japanese emperor today refers to himself in some sort of abstract plural.
There you go.
So thanks a lot. That was a great question, and it's something that comes up very frequently. Hopefully, from this point on, people will be more prepared if they get. I mean, the short argument is the people who are making that argument either don't know any better, or they're following some apologist who deliberately cooked this up and should have known better. So, but it's just plain wrong. All that word means is we are the guys who did this. It's just So thanks a lot.
We are
David.
the music makers and the makers of meaning.
Yeah. Thanks a lot,
you.
David. Take care.
So have we haven't talked about the sun and where it goes and
Oh,
and
yeah,
its
go for
orbit, have we?
Oh, well,
Go
Can
for
we
it,
start
Elliot.
talking
before
about
you,
that,
but you,
please?
before you jump ahead, right? Because there's still. Do you want to progress? Because we haven't done with Earth yet. Because there's actually 7 Earths according to the Quran. So why
Yes,
don't we
sir.
go through the Earths first, then the sky, and then to the sun? Let's do it like thematically.
Sure.
So basically, to begin with, so a bit of background. A notable aspect of post-biblical cosmography, so post-biblical Jewish cosmography, was the concept of 7 flat Earths piled consecutively, one atop the other, a theory that evolved gradually in late antique Jewish tradition. An example of a text espousing such a view is the I can't pronounce this word. The Reuat something that it's like the Doctrine of Ezekiel or something. A Palestinian rabbinical
language?
tractate.
What was the
It's
language?
in Hebrew.
Oh.
Hey,
So
maybe
I guess your Hebrew pronunciations are just as bad as your Arabic.
pretty much you hit the nail on the head. Basically, it's a Palestinian rabbinical tractate written at the very latest in the 5th century CE, which talks about there being 7 Earths, one atop the other. This conception of 7 Earths is repeated in the Quran, which states in Surah 65, verse 12, that God created 7 heavens and a similar number of Earths. So, there are 7 Earths according to the Quran.
There's actually another verse that it explicitly says that he made 7 Earths. Now, I can't remember the exact one, but I'm pretty sure I have it up here. Let me just take a quick look because I was pretty positive that it actually explicitly says that there are 7 Earths. And I think it's in Surah Al-Anbiya, which is 31, I believe, is Surah Al-Anbiya. Maybe I'm mistaken. Al-Anbiya. It's 21, Surah 21. And I believe it's somewhere around verse 33. Okay. Okay, let's see. May also be that in the tafsir it points to another verse that has it there.
That awkward moment when someone doesn't prepare for the show.
Yeah, well, I wasn't. It's not that I wasn't prepared. You're the one who brought it up, and you.
It's my fault.
I know that there is, in fact, السماوات سبعا والأرض سبعا. Okay, so here we're looking at. I'm looking at Tafsir Ibn Kathir for verses 30 to 33, and in his explanation of. إن السماوات والأرض كان رتقا, which means that the earth and the sky were either together or dry, which means جميع متصل بعض وبعض متلاصق ومتراكم, which means that they were all on top of each other. So he hit the sky, made 7 out of it, and hit the earth and made 7 out of it. And then he switched with them. So maybe you are correct in the fact that that's what it was said. But I'm looking at the tafsir, and it seems like that was at least a pretty common view of what this means, that there were 7 earths and 7 skies. which we have yet to discover. So maybe there's another scientific miracle waiting to happen here. But yeah, I think maybe there's a hadith that explicitly says it.
Well,
but I can't really say. So
one of the hadiths from Bukhari that talks about the Miraj says that when Muhammad arrived at the lowest of the seventh heavens, that's where he got off and parked his ride. So it doesn't. I don't. What would have if we're going with the model that says it's the seventh heaven? The seven heavens are planets. Then that would mean that he got off at like what, Venus or Mars or the moon. No, not the moon. The moon, because they knew they had the moon as a distinctive different body.
They did have the moon as
yeah. Yeah, they had the.
But did they though? Because
wouldn't it have been Venus?
Heavens,
what?
No, the seven heavens. Well, are you talking about what was understood by the ancients, or are you trying to rationalize it with modern science?
I don't even know.
Okay.
Because
so by the way,
the seven heavens refers to the seven celestial bodies that were known to the ancients.
Okay,
which
so
includes
the closest
the moon.
of those would be Venus, right?
The moon.
Well, but wait, I thought the moon was. But the moon
There's
was
one of those bodies.
The moon.
The
The
sun.
moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn.
Okay, so
that's what the seven heavens represent. The seven celestial bodies known to the ancients.
okay, so Muhammad arrived at a plane of
The moon.
that the moon was a part of.
Yes.
By the way,
So that explains why Ali and Jade never met any Muslim moon landing deniers, because they already it's perfectly feasible.
it was Ismail ibn Abi Khalid. He asked Abu Salih al-Hanafi, and that was what Abu Salih thought the verse meant when he says split the earth and the sky. That he made the seven earths and the seventh skies then. So it was most likely a hadith. I'm not sure where exactly it's collected, but it appears in Tafsir ibn Kathir.
All right. Well, I don't think there's anything more to be said about seven earths because it's such a vague reference in the Quran. But
Well, let's
what
take
about
the
seven
advice.
hells?
Let's take the advice of all the people who send me hate mail and go straight to hell. We're going to spend the
Yes.
rest of eternity there. We might as well do some reconnaissance. What are the seven hells? What are they like? And is it?
Surah 15 verses 43 to 44 indicates that there are 7 gates or compartments of hell. It isn't very clear if hell is like one of the earths, one of the 7 earths, and it's just divided into 7, or if there are 7 separate hells beneath the 7 earths, or if hell is a separate entity beneath the 7 earths with 7 sections. It's not very certain, but it's likely that this actually derives back that there's a possible very ancient source for this. The idea of 7 gateways to hell harks back to ancient Mesopotamian mythology, which describes the goddess Ishtar descending down into the netherworld through 7 gates consecutively.
Oh wow! See, I was ready to just lay the blame straight at Christianity's door, but it sounds like Christianity and Islam likely got it from Ishtar.
Are there 7 hells in? Well, it's
in some versions there are 7 princes of hell, and in some ancient and medieval Christian texts 7 is a recurring number. Although I think that maybe they divorced it later because 7 started to carry on the connotation of a lucky or holy number. But yeah, there used to be 7 princes of hell. I think there are 9. If someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there are 9 layers in Dante's hell. I read the Inferno, so I should know this. Hell levels.
You have now been discredited from ever again being taken authority on Dante's Inferno.
Why?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, you're talking about.
I am the king of terrible jokes today, by the way.
Seems like it. Yeah, there are 9. Yeah, there are 9 there. So he added 2 or had his own system. So yeah, but I mean, it's if she's ascended through 7 gates of hell and given the location, it's pretty easy to see that Ishtar, the legends of Ishtar, influenced both early Christianity and Islam.
Well, I haven't yet found it, but I would assume that this ancient Mesopotamian Semitic tradition would have influenced Levantine Semitic tradition,
Yeah.
i.e., the Talmud or something. Because there is the Dictionary of Islam explicitly says that the Talmud says that there are 7 hells. I just haven't been able to find yet that reference in the Talmud which says that there are 7 hells. Yeah, that's another interesting thing. So the thing with the Quranic cosmography is that it's definitely all pointing towards a flat Earth model, the sky above, hell below, whatever. But it seems to be internally contradictory. Like it doesn't seem to make much sense. Like it's flat Earth, but it's almost like 2 different kinds of flat Earth model.
Mhm.
Like influence of the Hellenic model and the Semitic model, and they're actually not really compatible. So the idea of the because the 7 heavens refers to 7 heavens refers to is actually from the Hellenic model, because the Hellenic model had, okay, so there are 7 celestial bodies, which is the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Jupiter, Saturn. Did I miss one? Anyway, 7 celestial bodies, and each body has like a sphere or a layer that it revolves around the Earth in. So the Earth's in the center, and then in concentric spheres around the Earth, there are the 7 celestial bodies, which is the 7 layers of heaven. And this was adopted into Judaism, late antique Judaism. They retained the flat Earth, but they had 7 layers of heaven. And Muhammad repeats this, 7 layers of heaven, but he doesn't seem to realize that the 7 layers of heaven are supposed to be for each of the celestial bodies, which is why we have the sun and the moon outside of those layers, because the sun and the moon seem to pass through them as they please, and then go around. Like, for example, the sun, passes so close to the Earth that it burns people. Right, like in the story of the Qarnayn, the muddy pool and the place of the rising sun, the place of the setting sun. The sun was so close to the Earth that it really burns people. Well, if the sun's that close to the Earth, passing down, rising up and going down, that seems to indicate that it's actually not in one of the layers of heaven. It's passing beyond the layers of heaven to go down so close to the Earth. Okay. So it seems as though Muhammad was actually ignorantly espousing 2 different. Like he didn't understand the implications of the model that he was saying, and so
I found a brief thing on the 7 different subsections of hell. Okay, now let me preface this. Just like when we read off some Catholic site, I'm not going to say that the person who wrote this information is authoritative or that their views are typical. Okay, because it's internet information. You gotta back these things up and take it with a grain of salt. But here is a description that I have found. Okay. Gehenna, most commonly understood to mean hell. In fact, it is one of the levels of hell. There are 7 levels of hellfire. Number 1 is Jahim, the shallowest level of hell. It is reserved for those who believed in Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but ignored His commands. Jahannam, deeper level where idol worshippers are sent. Sa'ir is reserved for worshippers of fire. That means Zoroastrians. Sakar is... this is where those who did not believe in Allah will be sent. Okay, well, that's kind of generic. It just says those who did not believe. Latha, this will be the home of the Jews. Hawiya, this will be the abode of the Christians. So they're even deeper. I would have thought it'd be the other way around, but
no. Traditionally, Muslims hated Christians a lot more than they hated Jews early on. But anyway, sorry, continue.
Oh, it's like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And then Hutama. The deepest level of hellfire. This is where the religious hypocrites will spend eternity. The worst of Allah's creation are the munafiqeen, hypocrites, whether they be mankind or jinn, for they outwardly appear to accept but inwardly reject Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Times have changed. To think there was a time where the Christian... I mean, I think it's funny because... There are some modern apologists who and some modern believers who I'm sure mean well, who will talk about interfaith dialogue and unity and focus on how much the Abrahamic faiths have in common and so forth. But a lot of the writings from both antiquity and the Middle Ages and many of the passages of the Quran itself, they indicate a great deal of hostility and also of mutual exclusion of doctrine. There's like I said, there's some Muslims who I think they want to. I don't know. They want to read between the lines and find some way that people of different Abrahamic faiths can be friends. But there's just too many verses that are quite explicit, saying, "Look, you say Jesus is the Son of God, you're committing shirk." And then you have what I just read. Like I said, I'm not saying that what I just read is authoritative, but it has to at least reflect some attitude of the authors of the Hadith and so forth. And granted, I don't think that the seven specific things, the seven specific gates, or in the Quran, to your memory, doesn't mention the seven specific gates of hell, because I don't remember the seven gates of hell from the Quran itself. That seems to come mostly from the Hadith. Is that correct?
The Quran. No. The Quran mentions seven. It says it's Surah 15, verse 43 to 44. Let me just speedily look up that reference. What was it again? Let me post. Now I'm the one who hasn't come.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll list.
There you
go. Okay, there you go.
15.
Are we losing your audio?
Okay,
he put in it's Surah 15 verse 43 to 44. So this says that that does mention seven gates.
Yeah, it says hell is the promised place for all these, with seven gates, each gate allotted share of.
Okay. So yeah, so I thought that was just from the Hadith, because usually it just says hell this and hell that and the fire this and the fire that and the fire. So it mentions hell a lot, but it must be only in one or two places that it mentioned the seven gates, because I could have
sworn. There's only one place.
Okay, well, there you go. So I mean,
why don't we move on to something nicer?
Heaven. Well, no. So there is at least some basis for what I read. Here's someone went to the trouble of compiling the list of tortures mentioned. Okay, eternity in blazing fire, hung. Some people will be hung by their breasts. Many people will
women
be
or men?
Huh?
Women or men?
It doesn't say on the list. Bound in yokes and chains, made to wear garments made of liquid pitch and fire. Faces covered in fire, lips burnt off, beat with maces of iron, fed choking, painful, noxious foods which will leave them hungry and boil their insides, boiling water poured over your head and used to scald the skin and internal organs, extremely hot and extremely cold, disgusting fluids with pus and blood, hot stones placed on the nipple that will burn through to the shoulder bone. I don't recognize these from the Quran. Some of these must be from the Hadith. Dragged by the face through boiling water and fire, burning embers beneath the arches of the feet, or shoes of fire that will cause one's brain to boil. Your intestines will come out, and this of course is my favorite. Exchangeable skins, so that people can be roasted over and over again. I think that was one of the most memorable passages of the whole book for me the first time. Is the whole thing about. So I mean, this is like combine the villain from the Saw movies with Donald Sutherland's character from the movie Backdraft, and you basically have the angels who are running hell. Man, I'm sorry. You have to really hate someone to think that they deserve that. Not talking about the author of the book, but anyone who thinks that a damnation, and this goes out to Christians as well. Anyone who thinks that someone really deserves that over a difference of opinion, I can't understand it. I'm sorry. Did I just kill the party?
No. I'm just really turned on by all this sadomasochism going on in hell. I mean, God sure knows how to throw a party. But yeah, why don't we turn to something a bit more cheerful and go upstairs to heaven?
Yes.
Well, before we get into the delights of heaven, thought it'd be interesting just to look at the structure. So, first of all, it's worth noting that ancient Semitic cosmographical tradition tells us that the Earth, the sky, and heaven are the same thing, and they're like a dome or a canopy over the Earth. And this is found repeated in the Quran. For example, the word for sky and heaven is the same word, sama'. The sky, heaven, is described in Surah 2 verse 22 and Surah 40 verse 64 as bina', which means a raised structure, a dome, a roof. And also in Surah 21 verse 32 and Surah 52 verse 5 as saqf, a roof or canopy. There's also amad, which are columns, pillars, poles, supports, lofty structures, holding up the sky, mentioned in Surah 13 verse 2 and Surah 31 verse 10, although it should be mentioned that these are بِغَيْرِ amadin taronnaha, or something along those lines, which means pillars that cannot be seen. So this could either indicate that they're invisible or that there are no pillars. God just holds up the sky with sheer will. I'm not sure which. It's, for example, the notable Muslim scholars As-Suyuti and Ibn Kathir rejected the interpretation that they were invisible pillars and believed instead that there were no pillars holding up the sky, although Ibn Kathir acknowledged that many famous figures in Quranic exegesis held the contrary view. Yeah. Ibn Kathir listed Muhammad's cousin, Ibn Abbas, and the early Muslim traditionalist Mujahid bin Jabr al-Makki as amongst those who held the Quran to mean that there are pillars, but you cannot see them.
Yeah. See, this is what Stop was talking about earlier. No, we can't hear you, Ali. This is what I was talking to Stop about earlier, is there's no mistaking that the word pillars occur and a word meaning they can't be seen. But even with the perfect translation, the lack of clarity comes from the way it's phrased, because it says without pillars that are visible. So, like I said, both interpretations are perfectly valid given the evidence that they have. There could be no pillars, or there could be pillars that just cannot be seen.
I think it's actually, can you guys hear me now, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's actually the latter, because I think that on multiple occasions it specifically says without columns.
Without columns?
Yeah, built the sky and holds it up without columns.
Oh, okay.
Not, I think the Quran actually explicitly says that in a couple of places. Let me just pull at least one of those.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
I don't remember that at all.
Pretty sure. Yeah, let me just.
Well, I'd wonder at that, because that would mean that was it Suyuti who took the?
Yeah. So okay, so it does say tarawnaha. So بغير أعمد tarawnaha. So yeah, I guess it does mention seeing in there. Yeah. And I've read that so many times, and I've always just assumed that it was without and not.
Yeah, that happens to me too.
I'm rereading it. I'm in the process of rereading it, and there's a lot packed in. I mean, I'm reading a story, and these guys were struck down with lightning and then immediately resurrected. And then these guys, Abraham saw one miracle and it didn't convince him, so he cut up 4 birds into pieces and then backed up and called them so that he'd be raised back to life. And I was like, I don't remember a lot of this stuff from the first time I read it. This is.
Yeah. Wow. I can't. I mean, I had never noticed the fact that it says that do not see. Mm-hmm. I always thought that it was just without columns, not without columns that you can see.
Here's a nerd reference. If anyone has ever played the Legacy of Kain games, the world is held together somehow with these magical columns that go as far into the sky as you can see, and they just go up in the distance. And it never really establishes whether they're pillars of infinite height or whether they're just really, really tall. Although, actually, I think in one of the games you can see the top of the pillars, so never mind. But in later games, when the graphics got better, they made them longer, so because the draw distance was improved. So they would just go all the way up into the exosphere, and then they broke apart, and you found pieces of them all over the land. So, like, the base of the pillars was in one place, and you'd be 100 miles away, and you'd find a piece of the broken pillar, like, laying right down because they shattered and fell everywhere. So it was that kind of bizarre image comes up. I mean, it's a shame that we don't live in a world with that kind of, where that kind of mythology isn't. Although if it did exist, it'd be normal to us, and we wouldn't find anything interesting about it.
self. Yes, no, I would hate that to be the case. My goodness. Okay, are we through? Because one thing that we're still missing, and this is the huge, big mystery, because somebody said to me that on 2430 and 24104, you can base the entire cosmology of what scientists say today.
On what?
I think it was, I don't have a Quran here, damn it, 2430 and 24102, I think it was. 2130 is, I think, where everything comes together.
21 or 24?
24. Yes, I've got my fingers crossed. I hope this is right.
Let me have a look. Quran.com/2430. Is that correct?
Yeah.
While you look that up.
No, that's not it. Definitely not it.
While you look that
Tell
up.
believing men to reduce their vision,
not even
guard their private parts.
I hate it when that happens.
It's probably 21, because that's the one with all the cosmology stuff around 30.
While you guys are looking that up, I brought on our next guest, Sam Brent. Thank you for coming. What would you like to ask us?
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, pal, all you guys. I'm curious about this. I've always come across this one argument that always bugs me is that now I was Muslim, but now I'm not, and I couldn't read Arabic now. I can't read Arabic now, and I couldn't read Arabic then. But I always get this argument. Well, it's pristine in Arabic and perfect, and maybe it's not good to you now, but if you read it in Arabic, it's perfect. I'm just wondering, how would I counter that argument? Because I'm always it's jumbled. I mean, maybe it's beautiful in Arabic, but the message is stupid to me.
Well, the easiest way to counter that is, I guess, then Islam is only for Arabs. Right? So get away from me with it, since I'm not an Arab, and then therefore I don't.
I am an Arab, but I just don't know to speak Arabic.
Well, okay, an Arab. Yeah. Then you have to be an Arabic. That the Quran is only for Arabic speakers.
Yeah,
that's the argument they want to make.
Well, you could.
And that's the logical conclusion.
You could do what a lot of the apologists do and try to bluff your way. For example, if a Muslim from Indonesia says, "Oh yeah, well you have to read in Arabic," just say, "Oh, did I tell you I was an Arab?" Don't let on that you don't speak the language, and maybe they'll just run away with their tail between their legs.
Yeah, but this is more when I speak in my family, and they know I don't have any good.
Okay. So now I actually faced this recently. I was in a circumstance where a Muslim girl approached me, and we had a discussion. It was at my university, and anyway, a discussion happened, and so we were chatting about Islam, and she was thick as a brick when it came to Islam. She had no idea what a madhab was. She didn't know she didn't even know if she was Sunni or Shia, or what her family's background was.
Yeah, I've dealt with those types.
I didn't even know she was a Muslim when she first approached, because there was no identifiable religious paraphernalia about her. So progressive, non-denominational, you know how they are. So anyway, we were chatting away, and I was like, well, the conversation moved to the Quran inevitably, and I was telling her how I didn't think it was particularly the word of God in my own personal opinion, and we began to discuss it, and I noted how it was tremendously incoherent, and she was scoffing at me and going, no, it all makes perfect sense in Arabic. I said, no, look, here's a thematic overview. I had my computer handy, and I spun it around and said, here's a thematic overview of Surah Al-Baqarah. Look how it jumps back and forth, legal issues, history, legal issues, Moses, Jesus, legal issues, salvation history, legal, it's incoherent. It should be thematically structured, in a more coherent and fashion. Instead, it's just absolutely incoherent. And she tried to pull the old, you can't speak Arabic. Oh, I can. It makes perfect sense in Arabic. Now, what I actually did was I'll tell you what I did, which still, I guess you could say, was still a counter argument, but then I'll tell you what I should have done and what would be an actual better argument. But what I did was, I said, well, look, here is a specific verse, Surat An-Nisa, verse 3, which changes topic randomly for no reason.
The one about the orphans, then it goes to the wives, the 2, 3, and 4.
That's right. Yep.
Even I remember that one.
And now, you know, it's Surah 2, Surah An-Nisa, verse 2, he's talking about orphans and how you should treat them well. And then, you know, Surah 3, he's like, and if you can't treat them well, feel free to marry 2 wives, 3 wives, or 4 wives. Then it goes on, the next verse after it is continuing on talking about wives. So it's a sudden jump mid-verse. And I said, look, incoherent. And I didn't really get a chance to press the point because then she got confused and she was like, oh, I know that verse off by heart. It's not talking about orphans. And I was like, yes, it is. And she's like, no. Do you mean those whom my right hands possess? Because the end of the verse, which is when it's jumped to wives, mentions Ma Malakat Aymanakum. And I was confused. I was like, what? You know, because I'm talking about the orphans in the verse, not Ma Malakat Aymanakum. And I said to her, do you mean Ma Malakat Aymanakum? And she was like, huh? And I was like, sex slaves. And the conversation ended there.
Yeah, that tends to happen. I avoid the Isha for that point.
Her shit. She flipped the fuck out. She was just started babbling at me and gibbering and like it was shit like, if I told my father about this, he wouldn't know what I was talking about. As if that invalidated what I was saying, because if her dad didn't know, it wasn't obviously in Islam, and therefore it wasn't like. Anyway, the point is though that what I should have done though is just said to her, okay, show me how it's not right. Show me. You have a knowledge of Arabic, so show me how. Explain to me how it's suddenly jumping from talking about orphans to jumping to talking about wives. Explain to me how that is not incoherent, because. It certainly seems incoherent thematically. So how is that not? And there is no counter argument. What can I say? Oh yeah, well in Arabic it also jumps from fucking orphans to wives. Like, there's no counter argument
with this actually, because I know it's wrong. They try to argue that it's orphan wives, and I'm like. Yeah. Okay, it makes still like, why are you making a differentiation of orphan wives? And technically, Safiya, Muhammad's wife at Khaybar, was technically an orphan because of Muhammad.
Well, I mean, I don't understand. Like, it's telling you how to treat with orphans, and it says, and if you're afraid you can't treat with them, then you can marry 2 wives or 3 wives or 4 wives. Well, yeah. But then 2 wives, 3 wives, or 4 wives could mean orphan wives.
Here's the problem.
Yeah.
The angel Gabriel suffered from a condition called AADD, Angel Attention Deficit Disorder. And as he was revealing to the Quran, he's like, and if you can't treat orphans well, hey, you want to ride bikes?
Oh. But the funny thing is that they talk about orphans and then they say, well, you cannot marry the mothers of the orphan, where I was always under the impression that an orphan didn't have parents.
Well... Yeah, maybe they did have a term that meant orphan that just meant no father, because the father was the provider. So,
do you know that is what they actually say? Really?
No, I'm just saying that seems like the reasonable counterpoint.
Yeah, but that's what they really say, that actually an orphan is somebody who's just lost one parent. It's just and it must be the father. So if the mother is over, you still call that child an orphan.
Well, if you had a society where women had little or no property rights, and that applies both to the Jahiliyyah days to an extent, and also to the early days of the spread of Islam. So, I mean, it could be that, if a single mother was just... the son or daughter of a single mother was a little better off than an orphan, in that, and so they could have. I don't know.
So the term half orphan hadn't been invented yet.
Half orphan.
Oh, okay, yeah. I also have one more question. Just if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. There's one point I'm curious about this, because I'm reading the Sirah as we are right now, and at the end of the one about Khaybar, I can pull up my Sirah right now. Look up the verse really quick for you. Or line, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Are you reading the Sirah to be able to combat your relatives?
Oh, totally.
Just okay.
Well, I already got the argument. I already got the argument from them. Oh, the guy's an anti-Islamophobe, and I'm like, and he gave me a source in Arabic which I can't read. Okay. Okay, I was curious about Sophia. Now, I'm curious, did he marry her in Khaybar and consummate the relationship in Khaybar? Because it says, have been beautified and gone to a fit state. The apostle Salab sorry for my pronunciations, mother, whatever. The apostle passed the night with her in a tent of his, and Abu Ayyub guard the tent overnight.
This was consummation because he made her wear the veil, or he told her to wear a veil, which indicated that she was not a slave, she was a wife. So it was.
Well, but wait, slaves could continue to be wives. I was just reading in Surah 4, the Surah of Women. It talks about even after a woman is married, you can have. There's a distinction made between free wives and slave wives.
What?
Yes.
Where?
So Surah.
I'm curious of this too.
Surah number 4.
Where, verse what? Come on.
Lazy ass.
What are you, fucking creationist or something? Come on.
Lazy ass. I read it. I read it.
There and then when they ask you the source.
Look, it's definitely. I think that you have to be wrong, mate, because you're either a wife or mal malakat amanakum. And you can marry your mal malakat amanakum. You can marry those whom your hands possess, but then they become your wife, not your slave.
Yeah, this is a question for Kling because I think he'll know this the best. But I know Sophia and Aisha; those are like probably the worst of the marriages, but because they tortured Kanana. But what is the? I mean, is there a worse like marriage that you could say that Muhammad committed or anything like that?
Good question.
Okay, now wait before you go on. It looks like I was mistaken after all. What I was thinking was. Surah 4, verse 25. It says, if you can't afford, I was thinking of, it says, if you can't afford to marry a free Muslim woman, marry a slave. That doesn't. Yes. So yeah, Klingschor was right about that. That doesn't mean that they necessarily take the slave status. So I retract that. But you still should have looked it up your lazy ass self.
You're talking about 4.3, aren't you?
How would I know? How would I know what it was?
You know all this stuff. You're the big.
Exactly.
You're the big Orientalist. You know everything.
How can I look up something that doesn't exist?
Atheismo. Are you talking about 4.3?
No, I was talking about 425, and like I said, I was wrong.
I somehow thought that was. I thought you were talking like 424 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhere around that area.
I was. You know what made me think, because I got in an argument about that. I was arguing with a Muslim, and they said, well, Islam doesn't allow slavery. And I said, but here's where it says. And then they said, well, you can't enslave your fellow Muslims. And I said, look, 424, it says clearly you can marry free Muslim women or enslaved Muslim women. So Muslims could enslave other Muslims, at least at some, according to some passages. So that's what I was thinking of, and I got my wires crossed. It had nothing to do with what Klingschor was talking about.
Generally, they would. You could take Jews and Christians as slaves. When your slave converted to Islam, you were supposed to free them. So that's how it is in Islamic tradition. It mentions it. Now I'm gonna have to go and find the reference.
Yes. No. It's fine. If you say tradition, it's fine because I can't remember it being in the Quran.
Okay, but I actually think it is in the Quran, but I'll look it up for you later because I want to get to what the questioner is asking.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sam Brett.
Oh wait, no. I think I'm back in the game, Klingschor. I think I'm back in the game.
Before anything, Bren is not my last name. My real last name. I'm just using that.
Sorry, everyone. It says if when they are honorably married they commit lewdness. This is referring to wives that were slaves. They shall incur half the punishment prescribed for free women.
Could you? Which
do you want me? I'll read all of 425. Okay, and this is from the Pickfeld translation. And whoso is not able to afford to marry free believing women, let them marry from the believing maids whom your right hands possess. God knoweth best concerning your faith. You proceed from one another. So wed them by permission of their folk, and give unto them their portions in kindness. They be honest, not debauched, nor of loose conduct. And if, when they are honorably married, they commit lewdness, they shall incur half of the punishment prescribed for free women in that case. So, okay, so at the time of marriage... Okay, so it's saying, if you've married them, and then it seems like saying after that they commit lewdness, they still have a distinct status that's slightly different from a woman who was a free woman before you married her. So they still have a slightly different status. They're wives, but
that's interesting. I didn't know that. Let's see. So,
I feel so much better because you don't know how painful it was for me to admit that I was wrong, especially to you. Especially to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at the verse itself. Yeah, non-Pickthal, but yes, you're Kling's right.
Other women are law for you.
I'm going to edit out the whole part where I admit.
No. Oh,
I hate being wrong. I hate.
Here's something.
Okay, so it's verse 25. Wow, there you go. Yeah, I think that is fascinating. But potentially the Quran is internally contradictory.
What other verse says that they necessarily gain the status of free? And I'm not going to look it up.
Now I'm going to delve deep into my old resources.
It's cool.
You know what? Screw it. For now, I'm going to let you have a tentative victory, and I'll look it up when I've got time. But right now, I just want to deal with the questions. So okay. So Muhammad's wife. Now let me. Now, were there any really shitty marriages? Regrettably, I don't have all my books with me, but
yes.
I do have one resource at least. All right. And if you give me one moment, I
love the irony is Islam is supposed to have this vendetta against sex and all these things, right? But every single conversation about Islam turns into sex slaves for some reason, or Aisha, or marrying 9-year-olds.
I try to avoid that one, but
irony.
Sam, you're right.
Unbelievable.
I caught flack for saying that I avoid it, but I try to make it a no Aisha zone because it's such a sensitive topic that many people will just many believers just won't talk to you. You know, they're just oh well, you're the worst of the worst. You just heard, and the fact of the matter is you can substantiate the age difference, but like I said, if it's just too sensitive.
And for one thing, isn't Sophia actually the same age of Aisha at the time of Hagar? I think they're both 17 or 18, isn't that? So the age actually differs.
Yes, Sophia was 17.
Yeah, they're the same age approximately, give or take.
All right, so right here I have a list of all the women whom Muhammad married. This is from Ibn Ishaq, but you can find all the evidence for this in Al-Bukhari as well. So it's. Don't think that it's just this source. Okay, Khadija bin Khuwaylid, married her normally. Aisha was married at the age of 6 or 7 and consummated at the age of 9. Sauda bin Zamar, she was the widow. Okay, who else have we got here? Zainab bin Jahsh. That one was pretty funny because
son-in-law.
Yeah,
but it's not like it's not as grotesque as some of the others. But it's for those who don't know, Muhammad used the Quran to make her marry his son-in-law, and then when Muhammad inadvertently expressed interest in in Zainab, his son Zayd divorced her. And then Muhammad was like, oh, no, it's fine. Then he divorced him, and Muhammad was like, well, actually, revealed a verse saying, Allah made it happen what you secretly wanted to happen. Yeah, and because Arabian custom forbade this, because a man marrying his son's wife, but because Zayd was adopted, Muhammad was like, yeah, adoption doesn't exist in Islam. The institution of adoption was abolished for Muhammad to fuck and marry. His adopted son's wife. Pretty fucking sad.
I know a Muslim friend of mine that he still they call him by Ahmed, but his real name's Tyler, and they don't actually have his last name is still the same thing as before, but he is the father would not fully adopt him because he didn't want to get rid of his last name apparently. I guess so. Yeah, I've heard of this before.
let's see. Salama was married to Muhammad. Hafsa bint Umar. Juwayriya. Okay, another one is Juwayriya. Okay, so basically, Muhammad attacked and conquered the Banu Mustalik, and he married Juwayriya then. But I think she proposed the marriage in order to kind of get out of the situation on top. And to also, she got to free most of her tribe because of that. Let's see.
Which one was that again?
Habiba, Zufia, Maimuma, Fatima. Then he had sex
so
with
Safia,
Mary, Raihana, Sharik, Maimuma, Zainab, and Karla.
Hold on, I'm going through the actual circumstances under which he gained these women. So Safia bint Huyay was the one who captured Khaybar.
After torturing Kanana, yeah.
Yeah, so he tortured her husband to death, killed her dad, and then married her and consummated her. And I think was it Ali bin Abi Talib who was circling the tent with a sword?
Abu Ayyub.
Abu Ayyub.
Yeah.
Because he was worried that she would kill Muhammad. Why would she want to kill Muhammad? Oh, right, because it was probably actually rape, because he just fucking killed her husband and father.
Yeah.
No, it was consensual. She wanted it. That's what Muslims today say. No, none of these rapes are rapes. The women, all the captured women, and from all these tribes, wanted to be captured and had sex with by the Muslim.
I could play devil's advocate on this because I just got this like 2 days ago, but they said, "Oh, she accepted Muhammad afterwards," and well, she had nowhere to go. They killed off both of her tribe, and
kind of
choice except go with the strongest man.
So this is Safia.
Yeah.
Maybe Safia was like that blonde chick from Game of Thrones, and she just fell in love with this noble warrior who ravaged her.
Yeah, that's pretty close, actually.
Okay, what else have we got? Maimuna, yep.
Well, okay, he had a lot of wives. We get it.
Yeah. I just want to know like the worst. Who was the first one you mentioned before? Not Sophia.
I'm loving this conversation and all, but shouldn't we be talking about cosmology?
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to say that the worst marriage,
the
worst was Safia. I'm going to say Safia was the worst, because he murdered her, had her dad and her family. He killed her family. And
how long? Well, now I don't want to. How long between the conclusion of the battle and the deaths of her family and the time that he spent the night in her tent?
It's
2 hours.
Days or
What?
Well, 26 days for like the whole battle, but it's like a few hours of the tent. Yeah. So isn't that right?
Wait. So they were captured in the battle, or executed, or killed in the battle?
He after the battle ended, it's because Khaybar was a series of forts, so they were destroying one fort at a time as they moved along. So when he it would have been when he conquered the fort of her family, he would have tortured her husband, and then that night had sex with her.
Oh yeah, that's right. They said he tortured him, so obviously he's a captive.
Yes.
So yeah, just later that day. That's
It would have been either the night, the day, like the evening after they killed her husband, or a day or two after they killed her husband.
Yeah.
It also depends on where you read, because if you look at Bukhari, for example, he says the beauty of Zafiya bint Huya bin Aktad, whose husband had been killed while she was a bride, was mentioned to Allah's apostle. So this is the polite version.
Because he killed her husband, and then someone's like, "Oh, he had a hot wife." So Muhammad's like, "Oh, there's a rocket in my pocket. Let's go and find her."
I can just imagine. I'm sorry.
How many
I'm sorry. I
wives
have the
did he
most
have?
cartoonish image of like him with the bloody sword over his shoulder, and then he's like, "Hey, I heard his wife is a real looker," and I'm like, and him like elbowing the guy who told him that. He's like, "Well, look at the little matchmaker over here. We got
Yeah.
Cupid."
A notable thing in the seer that I noticed is that he was
What
eyeballing.
goes through your head, Atheismo?
If you read the beginning of that battle in the seer, it talks about how he was already like kind of eyeballing her from the start. Like they already mentioned her within like the first page. So,
Helen
Kling,
of
how many
Arabia.
wives do you have in total?
It's different sources give different accounts.
Except this is why I'm asking how many do you
Yeah,
have? Because
someone in
I've
the
got
chat.
16.
Someone in the chat added to what I said, and I hear she's single.
Facebook.
I've got
her Facebook
16
status
wives
is single.
and then a couple of just
Concubines.
one night stands.
Different sources. So, for example, an Arabic-speaking friend of mine said that there are as many as 40 different wives mentioned by different sources collectively.
I thought I was
it's hard. Like there's just a lot of, because of course oral tradition is 100% accurate, and Islamic tradition in particular has perfectly preserved the details.
I
so we know
think that
exactly.
we've answered the question. Can we
Yeah.
get back on topic, please?
Let's
Well,
get,
okay.
We
we
should.
Okay, so
Never
We've got
Okay.
heavens to take care of. We've
Yeah.
got
yes.
sun to
let's-
take
Yeah,
care
I
of.
have one more question.
Ali has a point. We're going to wrap this up. But Sam, that was great. We really
Just make one
appreciate
more
your...
point real quick.
Yes, please.
What Jews pay you guys?
Oh, I used to say that to Hassan before every show.
Zionist Trust of Australia.
I used to say that to Hassan before every show. I was like, "How much are the Jews paying you?" And he would say,
Obviously, you guys don't know anything about Jews. We are paying the Jews. Jews don't pay people.
Oh yeah, of course.
They're taking a cut.
They take a percentage of our nothing.
Yeah,
Whatever
exactly.
it is, it's good enough.
Which stereotype do we use? Is it that they're funding us and causing
Use-
chaos,
use-
or is it that they're sucking our money? Like, so many stereotypes to choose from, really.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good talking to you guys.
Take care.
Salam.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
I one time I said to Hassan, I said, "How much are the Jews paying you?" He said, "Not enough."
But it's amazing how many Muslims automatically assume that as soon as you criticize anything, that you are a Zionist.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you remember my video I made on Iran, which has got 160,000 views, by the way. And this is still the first thing that people say. You are a Zionist spy who is just there to put down the Muslims because that is what you want. We will attack you and destroy you, and that is the first thing that you hear from them.
Well, in your case, they have a point.
Yeah. I'm just
Thank you so much.
This is why I'm amazed the Jews have it nicer than Christians in hell. I mean, it just shows how things have changed. I mean,
early Islam was really anti. Early Islam, like the Rashidi era, was really anti-Christian. It wasn't like the anti-Jewishness entered it later. It was always like the earlier sources from the time of the Christian and Roman, Greek, Syriac sources from the time of the Arab Muslim invasions talk about how the Arabs were really anti-Trinitarian and anti-cross. Like they were iconoclastic towards crosses. And so this is why the earliest Islamic, Arabo-Islamic architecture, which is the Dome of the Rock built by Abd al-Malik, all the quotes on the inside are not about the Muhammad, the Isra al-Miraj or whatever it is. That's all from the later Ottoman period. All the earliest quotes are all about Jesus and saying Christians are wrong. Jesus is not the Son of God. Jesus is not three parts. I mean, God is not made of three parts. That's what it's all about. And if you look at like even in the Abbasid era, the fiercest critics of Islam were Christians. The Muslims weren't arguing with Jews. It was all Christian, Muslim fierce polemics. Abd al-Masih al-Kindi and John of Damascus and all these people, and Leo versus Umar. And what Tom Holland said when I asked him about this, he thought that the reason why Islamic scripture, so the hadiths, paint the Jews in such a negative light, because overwhelmingly the Jews are the evil ones in the scripture, not the Christians. It was to make Christians of the empire, the massive majority, take heed what would be on them if they...
Klingschor, you're getting really robotic. I'm going to hang up on you and call you again, okay?
Okay, shall we carry on then with where were we with my 2130 and 21104?
Yeah, 104 not anything about cosmology.
No, what I'm saying is this guy says what it means is that the universe is created in 2130, and then in 21104 it shows that the whole universe will contract again and then start again from zero, and Allah is the one controlling all this. So this is the old model of the pumping universe, where where it folds together, or what
the
they
big
used to
crunch
think
model.
that it contracts. This is this
It's
bouncing
called
model.
the big crunch model, and it has been described.
No. There's one further than that, because first you have the expansion, and then you have the crunch, and then there's one that is one further, which is the bouncing one, which carries on forever and ever. Amen. Which expands, crunches, and so on. And that is what he said, cyclical universe. Thank you very much. And this is what the what this guy was saying, that this is what the Quran is propagating. And it's defined in those two sentences, 30 and 104.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think we already talked about 2130 for a little bit. We can always go into it a little bit more. And
well, it's the most ridiculous, stupid.
Well, it's obviously absurd. Yeah, I mean,
totally.
Well, it's fundamentally. I'm sorry, it's fundamentally incompatible. If they're going to say, so what they're saying basically is the Quran predicts cutting edge, cosmological, theoretic, whatever, right?
Ah.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing: if there's an end of days, and then that it's over. How is that compatible with the cyclical universe? Nowhere in the Quran does he say, okay, then Allah will create another world and more, and then have another. So I think it's completely incompatible, no matter how you read those individual terms.
Well, they say that it continues like this forever and ever until there is the day of judgment, and then everything stops.
Well, that would mean that that Adam wasn't the first man, and that there were previous worlds, and whether you're going backwards to previous worlds or forward to, I don't see how they can possibly reconcile it.
True. Ali, he's trying it anyway. He even has a brilliant formula, which is 1y plus 1x plus 1u, and then the next one is 2u and 3u and 4u and so on. So every time the universe comes together and then expands again, he adds one number, and this is how he explained this entire formula.
So it sounds airtight.
Yeah,
I'm a physics student, and I think we studied that in physics 439, I believe it was.
You laugh and you mock this. Other people take this serious. Do you know how many people said, I want to know exactly the formula. This is the most brilliant thing I've ever heard. This is scientifically correct. It's amazing how gullible people are. This is the point.
And of course, the answer is always 19, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that number 33, just for 2133, which is
he who created the night and day, the sun and moon, each floating in its orbit.
Aha! So we are talking about 2 ayahs away from the one that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Never mind whatever that one says. It says that the sun has its own orbit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does around the galactic core. Maybe it's...
No, it doesn't.
That's what they're saying. Yep.
Not a predictable orbit. No. Right. That's not true.
Yeah, you're right. It's drifting around it, but it's not.
There's not an orbit in any way. First off, certainly not that it would be of any use to anybody. You wouldn't mention it with the moon.
Well, why would you mention the sun?
Category.
Yeah, exactly. The sun and the moon are both mentioned in their orbits, so...
Yeah, it's not in the same category.
And it's mentioned in reference to the night and day. Well, why would the orbit of the sun be referenced in conjunction to night and day, unless the sun was moving and thus with the moon and making the night and day? Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense.
What about the night and day being the proof for a spherical Earth? I mean, that is equally ridiculous.
Well,
yeah, that makes no sense at all. I'm not even sure where to begin with that.
Because
what do you mean? Exactly.
Why
it's the same thing as the turban. You can only wrap a turban around something spherical. Otherwise, it never works. And there's your proof. Of course.
No, but a flat Earth can also have a sun going up and down, which is why the Quran mentions with the story of Dhu al-Qarnayn that the sun passes really close to the side of the Earth.
Well, that gets
ends up in the
Flat
murky
Earth.
water. Yeah.
The sun is close to it when it's down this end, further away, and then close again, which is why people on the edges get burnt. So the story of Dhu al-Qarnayn explains this, but it makes no sense if it's a round Earth, because then what? So does the sun go around the Earth in an oval, so it's really close suddenly at one point, and then it's far away in the other point? Like, nah, flat Earth makes a lot more sense.
Well, in 3636, to your point, Kling, it talks about the sun's orbit going underneath God's throne,
The stopping.
then going. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Is it
clearly
3638?
Yeah, but this is exactly where the water is, and that's why it says it swims.
3636. In 3636, it mentions this, and there's other ones too, where it talks about the sun.
3638 talks about the stopping place of the sun.
That's right. So I started from 3636 because
Remember,
it starts there with night and day, right? And so he talks about night and day, and then the sun goes to its place. That's in 38.
Yeah.
And
See,
when you read.
No, you go.
No, I was just going to say when you read the tafsir of this surah and any of the tafsirs really, it goes through a whole list of ayahs and surahs that talk about the sun and where it sits, and a bunch of hadiths where it does the same thing. And so it's obvious that what we're talking about here is the sun going around the earth, causing day and night.
Now, what is it? Surah 36, verse 36, are you saying?
36 to 40. 36 to 40. Right?
Ah, okay. So this is.
So,
but where does it mention the throne of God? Where does it mention the sun?
So what I said was that it goes to its place, and then when you read the tafsirs, it explains.
Yes. Yep.
It explains
I
what.
get it. And then the hadiths say that it resides under the throne of God. Yes. So this is an example of where Muhammad's flat Earth is got different flat Earth models going on here, contradictory, because the 7 layers represent the 7 layers. So the sun is supposed to be just in one of the layers, because that's what the 7 layers of heaven meant. But Muhammad didn't know this, and so he has the sun going all the way up to the top, where God lives, and hiding under his throne. And then also going all the way down to the bottom right by the side of the earth in the story of the al-Qarnayn, where it's so close that it's burning people who have to hide in caves during the day. So even Muhammad's incorrect model is internally inconsistent. He's got this is why it's actually really hard to sort of draw a diagram of the universe according to Islam, because it's incoherent. Does that make sense?
So yes, it does, and I mean it's pretty clear that this was not a scientific view of the world. Okay, I mean it's whatever else we can say about this. This idea that the Quran said, the Earth was spherical and the Big Bang, and back to Stop's comment about his friend who tells him that the whole universe is explained in these ayahs. It's obviously absurd, to say the least. But by the way, going back to, isn't there an actual place in the Quran where it talks about the place where the sun goes is under God's throne?
Yeah, I think there is.
So, because I'm looking, and it seems like maybe.
No, I remember it only saying that it runs its appointed course, and then the hadiths on that one expand that it goes under God's throne, which is underwater, and this is why it's swimming in its course. But I don't think the Quran actually mentions this, that it goes to sleep until it's allowed to rise again.
Yeah, because I'm reading here, and it seems that Al-Bukhari is the one who documents this particular.
Exactly. That's what I remember as well.
Yeah, of where the sun actually goes. But, anyways,
Yeah, I remember there was something about going to the throne. I forget if it's Quran or Hadith, but I do know the Quran this part is in the Quran about it setting in a pool of muddy water.
Yes.
Which I've heard apologists say is a metaphor for the pattern and colors that the sun makes as it sets. And they say, well, it's just just poetic language describing the appearance because it looks like it's getting muddy or whatever. A little bit thin, if you ask me, but what are you going to do?
The Quran is a miracle. I've converted.
Yeah, you've reconverted. Well, good.
The poetry has just gotten me now.
Yeah.
Now that I know that that's what it was supposed to be.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Final comments before we go. Quick before Klingschor gets back, Ali.
Well, I just the Quran has a lot of things about the universe, and thankfully that it does have a lot of things about the universe because we can then go and look through them and see what it actually says. And every single time we look at what these things say, it's obvious that at best these are primitive desert dwellers talking about stuff they had no idea what they were talking about. So that's that is everything. Pretty much the whole thing in a nutshell.
Stop spamming.
The Quran says a lot, but has nothing to say.
Ouch! Ouch! Man, you guys are brutal. Klingschor, final comment.
Oh, I just sorry, I just reconnected. You can like us on Facebook, join us on Twitter, check us out on iTunes, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All the links are available on each one to the other ones. And if you're watching live right now, you'll see up in the banner links to relevant things. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Final comment on today's topic. You have to be a bit cautious if you're striving for accuracy to say the Quran says the Earth is flat, because it doesn't. It just gives descriptions that are consistent with the flat Earth. You also have to be because I'm a stickler for this kind of thing, and many people who will argue counterpoint to it are also sticklers for everything. So furthermore, it says the Quran. You just have to be careful. Where it says the Quran doesn't specifically say that the Earth doesn't orbit. It just says that the sun and moon do, and then curiously doesn't mention that the Earth does. So like you do have to read between the lines, no matter going to which position. But I think that the evidence is pretty strong in the direction of the author of the Quran putting his chips. I know games of chance are forbidden in the religion. It's just a metaphor. Placing his chips with previous ancient misunderstandings of the way the world and the universe worked. So there you have it.
Oh, and one quick thing is Ibn Hazm thought that that the Quran indicated a round Earth. I just had to put that in for fairness because someone asked me to. Okay, cool. But most of the early traditionalists believe that it was flat according to the Quran. Cool. Sorry, continue.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching. We'll be back another 2 weeks. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care.